The unexpected warning. The Galactic Empire was a vast and powerful force, ruling over countless star systems with an iron grip. Their ships soared through the galaxy, and their armies were feared by all. The Empire had faced many threats in its long history, but none were as surprising as the message that arrived one quiet afternoon. Admiral Varric sat in his command center, overseeing the daily operations. The massive room was filled with holoscreens and buzzing consoles. His officers moved around efficiently, handling the routine tasks that kept the Empire running smoothly. It was during this calm routine that an unusual alert flashed on one of the screens. Varric's eyes narrowed as he read the message. It was brief and to the point, Run. No sender, no explanation. Just those 2 words. The message was so vague it seemed almost childish. He scoffed and dismissed it as a prank. This is probably just another prank from some fringe group, Varric said with a dismissive wave of his hand. His officers nodded in agreement. They had received countless threats over the years, most of which turned out to be empty threats. This one seemed no different. Meanwhile, on a remote human outpost, Lieutenant Sarah Collins was scanning space for any unusual activity. The humans had always been cautious, especially with their growing interest in galactic affairs. When the warning message reached their communication channels, Sarah's curiosity was piqued. She couldn't ignore it. "Lieutenant, what's this?" Sarah's assistant asked, pointing to the message flashing on their screen. Sarah examined the message carefully. The warning seemed to be coming from a source far beyond their usual range. "It's not from any known faction," she said, her voice filled with concern. "And it's addressed to someone. It could be a warning about a new threat." Sarah knew that the Galactic Empire was known for its strength and ruthlessness. They had never faced a direct threat from humans, and the Empire had always considered them insignificant. But something about this message felt serious. She decided to inform her superiors. At the Empire's command center, the dismissive attitude started to shift. Despite their initial reaction, the officers began to take the message seriously. Admiral Varric was known for his sharp mind and strategic thinking, and he was not one to ignore potential threats. He called a meeting with his top advisors. "This message might be a joke," Varric started, "but it could also be a genuine warning. We've never fought humans before, and it's possible they've developed something we don't know about." One of the advisors, General Loria, nodded thoughtfully. "We should investigate further. Even if it's a prank, it's better to be prepared." The decision was made to increase surveillance and monitor any unusual activity. The Empire's sensors were set to high alert, and scout ships were sent out to investigate the source of the mysterious message. The Empire's leaders hoped it was nothing more than a false alarm. Back on the human side, Sarah and her team were working diligently to decode the message. They knew that the Galactic Empire was a force to be reckoned with, and any warning from them deserved attention. They began to track down the origin of the message, using their advanced technology to trace its path. As the days passed, the tension grew. The Galactic Empire's command center buzzed with activity as they awaited further information. They knew that if the warning was genuine, they needed to be ready. The thought of facing a new and unknown enemy was both exciting and unsettling. The humans continued their investigation, and they soon discovered that the message was not a hoax. It was a genuine warning sent from a source that had been monitoring the Empire's movements. Sarah and her team worked tirelessly to understand the full implications of the message. The Galactic Empire's leaders decided to conduct a large-scale drill to test their readiness for a potential conflict. They wanted to ensure that their forces were prepared for any situation, no matter how unlikely. The drills were intense, with soldiers and officers pushed to their limits. During this time, rumors started to spread among the Empire's ranks. Whispers of a new threat and the mysterious warning began to stir anxiety. Soldiers and officers began to question what they were really up against. Some believed it was an elaborate ruse, while others feared the unknown. In the midst of all this, Admiral Varric remained calm and focused. He understood the importance of staying composed in times of uncertainty. He knew that the Empire's strength lay not just in its technology and might, but also in its ability to adapt and respond to challenges. As the drill concluded, the Empire's leaders were still no closer to understanding the true nature of the warning. The source remained elusive. The stage was set for what could be the beginning of a new and unprecedented conflict. The Galactic Empire, once confident in its invincibility, now faced the unknown. The humans, cautious and determined, were preparing for whatever lay ahead. With both sides bracing for the possibility of war, the galaxy held its breath. The mysterious warning had set the wheels of fate in motion, and the outcome of the impending clash would human preparations. As the Galactic Empire remained engrossed in its search for the origin of the mysterious warning, a different kind of urgency was building on the human side. At the heart of this storm of activity was the classified base on Alpha 7, a remote and secretive location where the human military's top strategists and scientists were hard at work. Lieutenant Sarah Collins, having already warned her superiors about the potential threat, was now deeply involved in preparations. Her team was working around the clock to ensure they were ready for any kind of confrontation. They knew that the Galactic Empire, despite its apparent dismissal of the warning, was a formidable opponent. The last thing they wanted was to be caught off guard. Inside the base, a flurry of activity filled the command center. Sarah was coordinating with engineers and scientists as they refined their defensive technologies. Her superior, Colonel Mason, had taken charge of the preparations and was known for his meticulous planning and strategic acumen. "Lieutenant Collins, we need to review our current defense protocols," Colonel Mason said, his voice steady but serious. "If the Empire is as powerful as we think, we need to be ready for anything." Sarah nodded. "We're upgrading our shields and weaponry. We've also implemented new countermeasures based on the latest intel. Our goal is to make sure that we're not just ready, but over-prepared." The base's labs and workshops were filled with the hum of machinery and the chatter of scientists. They were working on several key projects, enhancing shield generators, developing new types of energy weapons, and designing stealth technology to avoid detection. Each team had a specific task, and the sense of urgency was palpable. One of the most critical projects was the enhancement of the human warships. Engineers were working on installing new propulsion systems and advanced targeting systems. These upgrades were designed to give human ships an edge in any potential battle. The goal was to ensure that their forces could stand toe-to-toe with the Galactic Empire's advanced technology. In a separate area of the base, a group of elite soldiers was undergoing rigorous training. The training simulations were designed to test their skills under extreme conditions. The soldiers were pushed to their limits, mastering new combat techniques and learning how to operate the upgraded equipment. Sergeant Riley, one of the most experienced trainers, was leading the sessions. His commanding presence and sharp instructions kept the soldiers focused and motivated. "Remember, this isn't just about physical strength. It's about strategy and teamwork. We need to be ready for anything the Empire might throw at us." The soldiers, sweating and panting, understood the gravity of their situation. They knew that their training was crucial for their survival and success in the impending conflict. Each drill and exercise brought them one step closer to being ready for the unknown. Meanwhile, Sarah continued to oversee the coordination of the various teams. She spent long hours in meetings, discussing strategies with the top military minds. Their goal was to create a cohesive plan that would maximize their chances of success. "We need to anticipate the Empire's tactics," Sarah said during one briefing. "They're used to overwhelming their enemies with sheer force. We must use our technology and tactics to counter that advantage. We need to be smart and unpredictable," Colonel Mason agreed. "Exactly. We must exploit their weaknesses and stay one step ahead. This isn't just about having the best technology. It's about using it effectively and efficiently." As preparations continued, the base was also working on intelligence gathering. Human operatives were dispatched to gather any information they could about the Galactic Empire's movements and strategies. The aim was to gain as much insight as possible to better prepare for the upcoming conflict. In the control room, analysts sifted through data from various sources. They were looking for patterns and clues that could reveal the Empire's plans. Their work was crucial for shaping the human response and ensuring that they were not caught off guard. Outside the base, life went on as usual for most people. However, the tension was evident. There was an undercurrent of unease as news of the warning and the preparations spread. People were both anxious and determined. They understood that their safety and the safety of their loved ones depended on the military's readiness. Back at Alpha 7, Sarah took a moment to reflect on the situation. The scale of the challenge was daunting, but she was proud of the way everyone was pulling together. The sense of unity and purpose was inspiring, and she knew that they were prepared to face whatever came their way. As the days passed, the base became a hive of activity. Each team, each individual played a crucial role in the preparations. The goal was clear: to be ready for any eventuality, and to ensure that humanity could stand its ground against the Galactic Empire. With every passing hour, the sense of anticipation grew. The humans knew that they were on the brink of something monumental. The preparations were not just about upgrading technology or refining tactics. They were about preparing for a battle that would test their resolve, their courage, and their unity. As the Galactic Empire continued to search for answers and dismiss the warning, the human side was gearing up for the conflict that seemed inevitable. The stage was set for a confrontation that would determine the future of both sides. With their preparations nearly complete, the humans were ready to face the unknown and stand up to the Empire's might. The countdown had begun, and the galaxy held its breath. The clash between the Galactic Empire and humanity was drawing closer, and both sides were preparing for the confrontation that would define their destinies. First Clash. The day of the first clash dawned with an eerie silence across the galaxy. On one side, the Galactic Empire was still adjusting to the reality of the threat posed by humanity. On the other, the humans were bracing for their first real test against the Empire's formidable forces. The calm before the storm was almost palpable. Admiral Varric stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Star Dominator. The sleek, powerful ship was a symbol of the Empire's might. Its crew moved with practiced efficiency, preparing for what they hoped would be a routine patrol. But today, Varric and his officers were on edge, anticipating the unknown. "We've detected some unusual activity near the outer rim," said Commander Lyra, pointing to a display screen that showed a cluster of moving signals. "It looks like a small fleet of human ships." Varric's eyes narrowed. "We've never seen human ships in this sector before. Prepare the fleet for engagement. Let's see if these humans are as dangerous as the warning suggested." Meanwhile, in the Human Command Center, Lieutenant Sarah Collins was monitoring the situation closely. Her team had been tracking the Empire's movements and had detected the Imperial fleet approaching. She knew that the moment of truth had arrived. "Admiral Varric's fleet is approaching our position," Sarah reported to Colonel Mason. "We're ready for the engagement. All ships are in position and our defenses are fully operational." Colonel Mason nodded, his face set with determination. "Let's make sure they know they've made a mistake. Keep communication lines open and coordinate with all units." As the Imperial fleet drew closer, the tension on both sides mounted. The Galactic Empire's ships moved with precision, their sleek hulls gliding through space. The human fleet, while smaller, was packed with advanced technology and new strategies designed to surprise their opponents. The first sign of trouble came when the human ships appeared on the Empire's sensors. The humans had used a cloaking device to hide their presence until the last possible moment. As the Imperial fleet entered the range of the human ships, the silence was shattered by the sudden flash of laser fire. The Empire's ships were caught off guard. Their initial reaction was confusion as they scrambled to identify the source of the attack. The humans, using their new weaponry, struck with precision. The initial salvo of attacks disabled several Imperial vessels and created chaos within their ranks. "Enemy ships engaged," shouted a tactical officer on the Star Dominator. "They're using advanced weapons we haven't seen before. Our shields are taking heavy damage." Admiral Varric's face tightened as he assessed the situation. "Order the fleet to form defensive formations. Return fire and focus on those human ships. We need to regain control." The Empire's ships responded with a barrage of counterattacks. Energy beams and missiles flew through space, targeting the human vessels. Despite the Empire's advanced technology, the humans' strategic use of their new defenses helped them weather the initial storm. On the human side, Sarah's team was managing the battle with practiced skill. They had anticipated the Empire's response and had set up several traps and countermeasures. The battle was intense, with both sides exchanging blows and maneuvering for tactical advantage. Stay focused, Sarah's voice crackled over the intercom. We've gained the upper hand, but we need to keep up the pressure. Target their weaker ships and keep them off balance. The human ships, agile and well-coordinated, continued to strike at the Empire's fleet. The battle was a clash of technology and tactics, with each side testing the limits of the other. The Empire's formidable firepower was met with the humans' clever maneuvers and advanced countermeasures. As the battle raged on, Admiral Varric realized that the humans were not the weaklings the Empire had once believed. Their ships were equipped with technology that matched and in some cases exceeded what the Empire possessed. The realization was both shocking and alarming. "Reinforce our defenses and prepare for a sustained assault," Varric ordered. "We can't let them gain the upper hand. We need to show them the might of the Empire." Despite the increased pressure, the humans continued to hold their ground. Their ships remained resilient, and their tactics kept the Empire's forces off balance. The clash was proving to be more difficult than anticipated, and the Empire's commanders were starting to question their earlier assumptions. On the battlefield, the intensity of the fighting showed no signs of abating. The vastness of space was filled with the glow of explosions and the streak of energy beams. Each side was determined to prove their dominance, and the battle was a testament to their strength and resolve. After hours of fierce fighting, the Empire's fleet began to pull back. The humans had managed to inflict significant damage, and the Empire's forces were in disarray. The once confident Imperial ships were now retreating, their ranks broken and their morale shaken. As the battle subsided, Sarah and her team took stock of the situation. They had achieved a surprising victory, but they knew that this was just the beginning. The Galactic Empire would not take this defeat lightly, and the conflict was far from over. Colonel Mason approached Sarah with a look of approval. "Well done, Lieutenant. We've proven that we can stand up to the Empire. But remember, this is just the first clash. We need to stay vigilant and prepare for whatever comes next." Sarah nodded, her expression a mix of relief and determination. "Understood, Colonel. We've shown them that we're not to be underestimated. Let's continue to prepare for the challenges ahead." As the human fleet celebrated its hard-fought victory, the Galactic Empire retreated to regroup and reassess. The first clash had been a wake-up call, and both sides knew that the conflict was far from over. The galaxy was now in the grip of a new and uncertain struggle, with each side preparing for the battles to come. Empire in panic, the Galactic Empire, once the undisputed ruler of the galaxy, now faced a crisis of unprecedented proportions. The recent clash with the humans had shattered their confidence and left the Empire reeling. The once mighty fleet, known for its invincibility, was now damaged and retreating. Panic began to ripple through the ranks. In the Grand Command Center of the Empire's central hub, Admiral Varric paced back and forth. The usually pristine and orderly room was now filled with tension. Officers and advisors were frantically working to assess the damage and devise a plan for their next move. "Admiral, the damage reports are coming in," said Commander Lyra, her voice tinged with anxiety. "We've lost several ships and sustained significant damage to our remaining fleet. The human ships were more advanced than we anticipated." Varric's face was grim. The defeat was more than just a setback. It was a blow to the Empire's pride. "How could we have underestimated them so badly?" he growled. "We need to find out everything we can about these humans. We can't afford another defeat." The room was buzzing with activity as various officers scrambled to analyze the data from the battle. The Empire's once unquestionable superiority was now in question, and the realization was hitting hard. The loss of so many ships was a significant blow, both strategically and psychologically. In a secluded room, a group of high-ranking Imperial scientists were busy examining the technology recovered from the human ships. They had brought back fragments of the advanced weapons and shield generators that had inflicted such damage. The scientists worked in silence, their faces etched with concentration. "We've never seen technology quite like this before," one of the scientists admitted. "It's clear that the humans have made advancements that we didn't know about. We need to understand their technology and find a way to counter it." The urgency of the situation was underscored by the Empire's leadership. They held an emergency meeting to address the crisis. Varric, surrounded by his top advisors, was trying to maintain control of the situation. "This defeat is unacceptable," Varric said forcefully. "We need to launch a full-scale investigation into the humans' capabilities. I want every available resource focused on learning more about them. We cannot allow ourselves to be outmatched again." The advisors nodded, their faces serious. They understood the gravity of the situation and the need for a swift response. The Empire's reputation was at stake, and there was no room for error. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, the human command center was buzzing with a mixture of relief and cautious optimism. Lieutenant Sarah Collins and her team had achieved a significant victory, but they knew that the Empire would not give up easily. They had proven that they could stand up to the Empire, but they were fully aware that this was only the beginning. Colonel Mason approached Sarah with a look of approval. "You did well out there. The Empire's retreat is a big win for us. But don't get too comfortable. They're going to regroup and come back stronger." Sarah nodded. "I understand, Colonel. We need to use this victory to our advantage and continue preparing. The Empire won't take this defeat lightly." Back in the Empire's command center, the atmosphere was one of urgent activity. The leadership was grappling with the realization that their once-feared empire was facing a serious threat. The panic was palpable as they scrambled to come up with a plan to regain their lost prestige. "Deploy additional ships to the front lines," Varric ordered. "We need to show strength and reassure our allies. The humans may have had a lucky break, but we will not be caught off guard again." The Empire's fleets were mobilized and sent to strategic locations to bolster their defenses and prepare for a potential counterattack. The leadership understood that they needed to demonstrate their resilience and resolve. The defeat had shaken their confidence, but they were determined to recover and reassert their dominance. As the Empire's forces regrouped, there was also a flurry of diplomatic activity. The Empire's leaders reached out to their allies, seeking support and reassurance. They wanted to ensure that their position was not further undermined by the recent events. The galaxy was now on edge. The recent clash had shifted the balance of power and introduced a new level of uncertainty. The once unchallenged Galactic Empire was now facing a formidable opponent in the form of humanity. The sense of panic within the Empire was mirrored by the cautious optimism among the humans. Back on Alpha 7, the human command center was abuzz with preparations for the next phase of the conflict. Sarah and her team were busy refining their strategies and enhancing their defenses. They knew that the Empire's next move would be critical, and they wanted to be ready for whatever came their way. The clash had been a wake-up call for both sides. The Empire was grappling with the reality of a serious threat to its supremacy, while the humans were preparing for the challenges ahead. The galaxy was now in a state of flux, with each side readying itself for the next encounter. The tension was building as the Empire's forces mobilized and the humans prepared for the inevitable follow-up to their victory. The first clash had set the stage for a prolonged and uncertain struggle. The galaxy watched and waited as the two sides prepared for their next confrontation. Battle intensifies. The galaxy was now a battleground of heightened tension. The recent clash between the Galactic Empire and humanity had set the stage for an escalating conflict. Both sides were preparing for a fight that promised to be more intense and decisive. Admiral Varric, recovering from the shock of his fleet's defeat, had redoubled efforts to regain control. The Empire's leadership had issued orders to bolster their forces and enhance their strategies. The once proud fleets were now bracing for a protracted and brutal conflict. The Empire's vast war machine was mobilizing with renewed purpose. In the command center of the Empire's central hub, Varric addressed his senior officers with a steely gaze. "We cannot afford any more setbacks. The humans have proven themselves more resilient than we expected. We need to adapt our tactics and launch a series of calculated strikes to break their momentum." Commander Lyra, who had been working tirelessly to analyze human strategies, nodded. "We've identified their primary strongholds and key defensive positions. Our plan is to target these areas with precision strikes to weaken their defenses." Meanwhile, on Alpha 7, Lieutenant Sarah Collins and her team were fully aware that the Empire was preparing for a more aggressive response. The recent victory had not only boosted their morale, but had also intensified their preparations for the battles to come. Sarah reviewed the updated battle plans with Colonel Mason. We've detected increased Imperial activity in multiple sectors. They're gearing up for a major offensive. We need to be ready for their next move. Colonel Mason agreed, his expression serious. We anticipated this escalation. Let's make sure our forces are deployed effectively and that our defenses are fortified. We can't afford any mistakes. The Human Command Center was abuzz with activity as the military prepared for the impending confrontation. Engineers and technicians were working to upgrade the fleet's weaponry and shields, while tactical officers refined their strategies based on the latest intelligence. In space, the two sides were preparing for the clash. The Empire's fleet, now reinforced and re-energized, moved with a sense of purpose. The ships, sleek and menacing, were ready to strike with overwhelming force. The Empire was determined to assert its dominance and re-establish its control. Human forces, on the other hand, were deployed in strategic positions, ready to defend against the anticipated assault. Their ships, equipped with the latest technology, were prepared for a fierce battle. The human strategy was to use their agility and advanced defenses to counter the Empire's brute strength. As the battle began, the intensity of the conflict reached new heights. The Empire's fleet launched a series of coordinated attacks on key human positions. The initial waves of assault were fierce, with energy beams and missiles lighting up the void of space. Human ships engaged with precision, using their advanced targeting systems to strike back. The clash was a dazzling display of firepower and tactics, with each side vying for control. The space around the battlefield was filled with the roar of explosions and the glow of energy weapons. Lieutenant Sarah Collins was at the heart of the action, coordinating with her fleet and providing real-time updates. All units, hold your positions and focus on the incoming Imperial forces. We need to protect our key strongholds and counter their attacks effectively. The human fleet maneuvered with agility, their ships darting around the larger Imperial vessels. They used their advanced stealth technology to avoid detection and launch surprise attacks. The Empire's ships, while powerful, struggled to keep up with the humans' hit-and-run tactics. Despite their advanced weaponry, the Empire's forces were facing difficulties. The humans' defensive measures and tactical maneuvers were proving to be effective. The Empire's attempts to overwhelm the human positions were met with fierce resistance. Admiral Varric, observing the unfolding battle from his flagship, was growing increasingly frustrated. Our forces are being outmaneuvered. Increase the intensity of our attacks and deploy additional reinforcements. We need to break through their defenses. The battle raged on, with both sides exchanging heavy fire. The Empire's ships pressed their assault, targeting human vessels and attempting to break through their defenses. The humans, however, remained resilient, their ships holding their ground and repelling the attacks. In the Human Command Center, the atmosphere was one of focused determination. The battle was intense, but the human forces were holding their own. The latest updates from the front lines showed that their defenses were holding firm. Colonel Mason watched the progress with a mix of relief and concern. We're holding our positions, but we need to remain vigilant. The Empire is relentless, and we can't afford to let our... As the hours passed, the battle showed no signs of slowing down. Both sides were locked in a struggle for supremacy, with each side determined to gain the upper hand. The clash was a testament to their strength and resolve, and the outcome remained uncertain. Despite the fierce fighting, the humans managed to achieve several key successes. Their tactical maneuvers and advanced technology allowed them to strike at vulnerable Imperial positions. The Empire's losses were mounting, and their morale was beginning to falter. The battle was a brutal reminder of the stakes involved. The Empire's attempt to reassert its dominance was met with fierce resistance from the humans. The clash was far from over, and both sides were preparing for the next phase of the conflict. As the battle drew to a close, the human forces had managed to hold their ground and inflict significant damage on the Empire's fleet. The Empire's retreat was a sign of their growing frustration and the effectiveness of the human resistance. Lieutenant Sarah Collins and her team, though exhausted, were proud of their achievements. They had proven their ability to stand up to the Empire and had pushed back against their aggressive tactics. The conflict was far from over, but the humans had shown that they were a force to be reckoned with. The galaxy remained on edge, watching as the struggle between the Galactic Empire and humanity continued. The battle had intensified, and both sides were preparing for the next confrontation. The outcome of the conflict was still uncertain, and the stakes had never been higher. Turning the tide. The battle between the Galactic Empire and humanity was at a critical juncture. After weeks of intense fighting, both sides had endured heavy losses and were preparing for a decisive shift. The recent clashes had left the Empire reeling, and humanity had seized the opportunity to gain the upper hand. In the Empire's command center, Admiral Varek was feeling the pressure. The recent battles had taken a toll on his forces, and the Empire's once unshakable confidence was now shaken. The Admiral was determined to turn the tide, but the path to victory was becoming increasingly elusive. "Admiral Varek, we've received reports of increased human activity in several key sectors," Commander Lyra said, her voice tense. They seemed to be preparing for a major offensive. Varek's eyes narrowed. "We cannot afford another setback. We need to regroup and come up with a plan to counter their advances. Our losses have been substantial, and we need to strike back with everything we've got." The Empire's command staff worked furiously to develop a strategy. They focused on consolidating their forces and reinforcing their positions. The goal was to launch a counteroffensive that would push the humans back and reassert the Empire's dominance. Meanwhile, on Alpha 7, the human command center was buzzing with activity. The recent victories had boosted morale, but the leadership knew that the conflict was far from over. Lieutenant Sarah Collins and her team were preparing for the next phase of the battle. "We've seen a lot of movement from the Empire," Sarah said to Colonel Mason. "They're regrouping and preparing for a big push. We need to be ready for their next move." Colonel Mason nodded. "We've made significant progress, but we must stay vigilant. Our recent successes have given us momentum, but we need to press our advantage and continue to push the Empire back." Human forces were busy refining their strategies and upgrading their technology. Engineers were working on new weapon systems and defensive measures to enhance their capabilities. The goal was to build on their recent successes and turn the tide in their favor. As the days went by, both sides prepared for the inevitable confrontation. The Empire's forces were reorganizing and strengthening their positions, while the humans were working to exploit their recent gains. The stage was set for a critical battle that would determine the future of the conflict. The Empire's plan was to launch a series of coordinated attacks on key human strongholds. They aimed to break through the human defenses and disrupt their operations. The Empire's fleet was mobilized, and the ships were prepared for a full-scale assault. Human forces, aware of the impending attack, were readying their defenses. The command center was abuzz with preparations as the humans deployed their ships and fortified their positions. The goal was to hold the line and prevent the Empire from gaining any ground. When the battle commenced, it was clear that both sides were fully committed. The Empire's fleet, with its overwhelming firepower, surged forward, targeting human positions with relentless intensity. The space around the battlefield was filled with the clash of energy beams and the roar of explosions. Human ships engaged with precision, using their advanced technology and tactics to counter the Empire's assault. The human forces were determined to defend their positions and push back against the Empire's offensive. The battle was fierce and brutal. The Empire's ships pressed their attack, but the humans held their ground with unwavering resolve. The clash was a test of endurance and strategy, with each side striving to gain the upper hand. Lieutenant Sarah Collins was at the center of the action, coordinating with her fleet and managing the battle from the command center. "All units focus on defending our key positions. We need to hold the line and prevent the Empire from breaking through." The human fleet maneuvered with agility, launching counterattacks and targeting vulnerable Imperial positions. Their advanced technology and tactical maneuvers proved effective, and the Empire's forces were struggling to make significant gains. Admiral Varek, observing the battle from his flagship, was growing increasingly frustrated. The Empire's offensive was not achieving the desired results. "Our forces are being pushed back. Increase the intensity of our attacks and deploy additional reinforcements." Despite the Empire's efforts, the tide of the battle was shifting. The humans, using their recent successes as a foundation, were beginning to push back against the Empire's assault. The clash was becoming more evenly matched, and the Empire's once dominant position was in jeopardy. In the human command center, there was a sense of cautious optimism. The recent advances and the ability to withstand the Empire's offensive had given the humans renewed confidence. They continued to press their advantage and work to turn the tide in their favor. Colonel Mason was closely monitoring the situation. "We're holding strong, but we need to maintain our momentum. The Empire is struggling, and we need to take advantage of their weaknesses." As the battle continued, the humans made significant gains. They managed to repel the Empire's attacks and inflict damage on their forces. The Empire's fleet, once formidable, was now facing a determined and resilient opponent. The clash was a turning point in the conflict. The Empire's attempt to regain control was met with fierce resistance, and the humans were proving themselves to be a formidable force. The tide of the battle had shifted, and the outcome was no longer certain. As the battle drew to a close, the Empire was forced to reevaluate its position. The recent clashes had taken a toll on their forces, and their confidence was waning. The humans had successfully turned the tide and were now in a stronger position than before. Lieutenant Sarah Collins and her team, though exhausted, were proud of their achievements. They had managed to push back against the Empire and gain a critical advantage. The conflict was far from over, but the recent victories had given humanity a significant boost. The galaxy watched as the struggle between the Galactic Empire and humanity continued. The recent battle had demonstrated the resilience and determination of both sides. The conflict was set to continue, with each side preparing for the next phase of the struggle. The tide had turned, and the future of the galaxy hung in the balance. The clash between the Empire and humanity had reached a new level of intensity, and the outcome remained uncertain. Both sides were preparing for the next confrontation, with the fate of the galaxy at stake. The final outcome. The galaxy was on edge as the final confrontation between the Galactic Empire and humanity loomed. After weeks of intense battles and shifting tides, the stage was set for a decisive clash. Both sides were prepared for a showdown that would determine the fate of their conflict. In the Empire's command center, Admiral Varric was determined to end the conflict on his terms. The recent setbacks had been severe, but he was resolute. The Empire's leadership had devised a final plan to strike at the heart of the human resistance and reclaim their lost dominance. "We've lost ground, but we can still turn this around," Varric said to his senior officers. "Our final offensive will target their core systems and key strongholds. We need to crush their ability to fight back and force them into surrender." Commander Lyra, her face set in grim determination, nodded. "We've identified their most critical targets. This will be our most challenging assault, but if we succeed, we can regain control and end this conflict." Meanwhile, on Alpha 7, the human command center was a hive of activity. Lieutenant Sarah Collins and her team were preparing for the Empire's final push. The recent battles had given them confidence, but they knew that the final outcome was far from guaranteed. Colonel Mason addressed his team with a serious tone. "The Empire is gearing up for a decisive strike. We need to be ready for their..." Human forces were mobilizing for the crucial battle. Engineers and technicians were working around the clock to upgrade their defenses and enhance their weaponry. The goal was to withstand the Empire's final push and turn the tide in their favor. As the day of the final confrontation arrived, both sides were ready. The Empire's fleet, massive and imposing, was prepared for a full-scale assault. The ships were equipped with the latest weaponry and were poised to strike with overwhelming force. The human fleet, though battle-worn, was determined and resolute. The command center was a flurry of activity as they made final preparations for the impending clash. The humans had their defenses fortified and their strategies fine-tuned. The battle began with a thunderous roar. The Empire's fleet surged forward, launching a barrage of attacks on human positions. The space around the battlefield erupted with energy beams and explosions as the two sides clashed in a dramatic display of firepower. Human ships engaged with precision, using their advanced technology and tactical maneuvers to counter the Empire's assault. The clash was intense, with both sides exchanging heavy fire and striving to gain the upper hand. Lieutenant Sarah Collins was at the forefront of the battle, coordinating with her fleet and managing the fight from the command center. "All units, hold your positions and focus on repelling the Empire's attacks." We need to protect our key systems and push back with everything we've got. The human forces fought with fierce determination, their ships maneuvering with agility and precision. They used their advanced technology to launch counterattacks and target vulnerable Imperial positions. The Empire's fleet, though powerful, was struggling to break through the human defenses. Admiral Varric watched the battle unfold from his flagship, his frustration growing. The Empire's final assault was not achieving the desired results. Our forces are not making the progress we expected. Increase the intensity of our attacks and deploy additional reinforcements. Despite the Empire's efforts, the human defenses held firm. The recent upgrades and strategic adjustments had strengthened their position. The Empire's offensive was met with fierce resistance, and their progress was slow. The clash continued with escalating intensity. The human forces, though exhausted, were resolute. They fought with everything they had, determined to defend their positions and secure a victory. The Empire's attacks were relentless, but the humans were proving to be a formidable opponent. As the battle raged on, it became clear that the tide was turning in favor of humanity. The Empire's fleet, despite its power, was unable to break through the human defenses. The Empire's losses were mounting, and their morale was faltering. Colonel Mason, observing the progress from the command center, was cautiously optimistic. We're holding strong and making significant progress. The Empire's offensive is losing momentum, and we need to press our advantage. The final confrontation reached its climax as the human forces launched a decisive counteroffensive. With coordinated attacks and strategic maneuvers, they managed to break through the Empire's lines and inflict severe damage on their fleet. The Empire's forces, battered and beleaguered, were forced to retreat. The once mighty fleet was in disarray, and the Empire's leadership had no choice but to pull back. The humans had successfully turned the tide and achieved a crucial victory. As the dust settled and the battle came to an end, Lieutenant Sarah Collins and her team took stock of the aftermath. The conflict had been fierce, but humanity had emerged victorious. The Empire's defeat was a testament to the resilience and determination of the human forces. The galaxy watched as the struggle between the Galactic Empire and humanity reached its conclusion. The final battle had demonstrated the strength and resolve of both sides, but the outcome was clear. Humanity had proven itself to be a formidable force and had secured a significant victory. The conflict had taken a heavy toll on both sides, but the final outcome was a victory for humanity. The Empire's dominance had been challenged, and the galaxy was left to grapple with the consequences of the clash. The future was uncertain, but humanity had shown that it was a force to be reckoned with.